Hi, my name is David B. Horne, and I'm the founder and author of Add Then Multiply. I work with entrepreneurs on scale-up strategies through building their finance functions and supporting them to grow through my FACE methodology: fund, acquire, consolidate, exit. And I'm super happy to be here today on the Online Prosperity Show. Hope you enjoy it. Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today on the show, we have a guest who's refined what it means to be a right-brained accountant. Now, David, how are you doing today?
I'm very well, thanks, Prosper. Great to be here.
Fantastic. Now, for those that are meeting David for the very first time, let me just take you out of, first of all, your misery, and second of all, that proverbial internet rock you've been under, because he's the mastermind behind Add Then Multiply, a consultancy that's not your typical number crunching affair. He's also got over 30 years of international business experience, where David has helped companies raise over 150 million and also executed a whopping 29 acquisitions, and yet he's still got one foot in the entrepreneurial world, and he's just really committed to guiding founders who want to make really big impacts. Now, with a CV like that, it goes to show the kind of person that he has become. And did I also mention that he's also multilingual? So if you're a founder who's looking for strategic growth that actually aligns with a big why, I want you to stay tuned, because you'll want to hear David's insights on building businesses with both heart and a bottom line in mind. Not a lot of accountants can actually do that. I was joking with David when he jumped onto the show today, saying my accountant sends me nothing but a bill, and he always points to the cloud. And looking out of my window with Melbourne's weather, I don't even know which cloud has got any of my data. So today we're going to be diving into David's journey from being a corporate CFO to wine enthusiast, and also a finance strategist. And we're also going to be exploring the valuable lessons that he's learned along the way. And if you're wondering why working with David will be a game changer, well, this is a podcast you've been waiting for. I think this conversation will actually spell it out. So let's actually get started. Now, David, I could go on and talk about things I'm not even qualified to talk about. Your journey actually spans, corporate CFO roles to entrepreneurial finance. First of all, how did you get started, and what actually inspired you to take such a bold shift to move from corporate to entrepreneurial pursuits?
So how I got started, I think finance is in my blood. When I was a little boy, playing games like Monopoly and stuff, all my friends always said, "Oh, you be the banker, you be the banker." And then when I was at university, I had a job in a bank. So I was, I'm just used to handling money, dealing with money. And then when I graduated, I joined PWC, the big global accounting firm, and trained to become a chartered accountant with them. This was in Vancouver, Canada, where I was born and raised. And when I qualified, I had an opportunity to move with PWC to Zurich, Switzerland. I'm a fluent German speaker, and I told the firm that I wanted to live in a German-speaking country. And one day came into the office, and there was this offer. So my wife and I, at this stage, we'd been married for 4 years. So we sold off what few possessions we had, packed our clothes into 4 suitcases, got on board an airplane with one-way tickets and a 2-year employment contract, and that was 37 years ago.
Wow. Congratulations. Ich habe eine kurze Zeit in Deutschland gelebt, und ich weiß, mein Deutsch ist echt sehr scheiße, but this is the best I can do on short notice.
Nicht schlecht. Nicht schlecht.
Fantastic. Obviously, it's not easy leaving what you'd always known, going into something
It was a big adventure.
Right. Was there anything that prepared you for this, or you just really wanted to get into the
I had done a couple of family holidays to Europe in my teens with my parents, and I fell in love with Europe, and I decided at the age of 15 that I wanted to live in Europe. And 10 years later, my wife and I moved to Europe, and we've lived here ever since. So yeah, when I was 15, I didn't know what a life goal was, but that was my first life goal.
Absolutely, and you followed through with it, which
Yeah,
not a lot of people have even hit a few milestones that they put themselves
yeah.
to. Right.
Yeah.
So you then left the corporate world, and
So
you.
I worked for PWC in Switzerland, and then I got a job with a big corporate, which was one of my biggest clients. I moved with them to London in 1993. So we were in Switzerland for 6 years in total, 2 years with PWC, and then 4 years with the corporate. Moved to London and spent another 6 years in corporates, big corporates, and then moved into kind of more medium-sized businesses between 2000 and 2010, where I was the CFO of three companies, a PR agency, a digital media and publishing group listed on the London Stock Exchange, and an auction business listed on the London Stock Exchange in the small cap sector. And what all three of those companies had in common was that they raised money and bought other companies. And so I became a bit of an expert in fundraising and M&A. Not from the angle of a venture capitalist or an investment banker or a boutique advisor, but actually inside the company, doing the work, doing the deals, dealing with the paperwork, dealing with the, making the transactions, then dealing with everything with the fallout once the deals come together and all that. So, yeah.
You see, if you really trace back to where you started, automatically you are in a very unique position. I mean, Canadian that speaks German and then so happens to move to those places, and the right things happen. You start doing mergers and acquisitions, and many people would usually do a home transaction once in their whole life, and that's like a big acquisition that they would do. But if you're doing transactions as if you're selling candy or chips at
Yep.
McDonald's, then that really puts you in the front line. So these experiences, how would you attribute them to the person you've become today?
I think, and it's interesting. I never set out strategically to say this is what I wanted to do. Life just unfolded. But I look back on it now, and I think as Steve Jobs said in that famous valedictory speech that he did for Stanford, you can only connect the dots looking backwards. And so looking backwards, yeah, it put me on a pathway, and it was really interesting because I left corporate world in 2010, and I had a bit of a midlife crisis and tried to launch a wine business, which was great fun but not very successful. And I had a go at that for a couple of years, and then decided, okay, well, I'll keep the wine business, but it's a hobby. I'm its biggest customer, and really focus back on what I do with finance in businesses. And it took me a while to kind of just refine my footing. And then in 2016, I came across a fellow Australian of yours, a guy called Daniel Priestley, and I did one of his programs, and that was a game changer for me because that enabled me to sit back and think. Because I guess beforehand, when I was working for these companies, and my peers in other companies were doing similar things, and all of a sudden I'm now out, on my own, building an entrepreneurial business that's focused around finance, and I'm thinking, well, everybody can do that, and all of a sudden I realized actually I've got a skill set that not very many people have, and I zeroed in on that skill set. And probably the biggest game changer in all of that was when I wrote and published my book, Add Then Multiply. And that really just forced me in to say, this is who I am, this is what I do. And I've built my business around that over the last 7 or 8 years, and just clearly bringing it closer and closer and closer. And all of a sudden you get to a point and it's like, yes, this is it, and now go. And we've got to that point now, and we're putting the jets on.
Fantastic. And when you mentioned Daniel Priestley, was that a key person of influence?
It was. Yes.
I can only imagine with the publication that you have done. Congratulations, my man. I can
Thank you.
already see where this all started to turn in. But like you said, the
But
transition.
I'll just throw in an interesting factoid. So after completing the Key Person of Influence program, Daniel reached out to me, and I am the chief financial officer of his company
Oh, wow. Wow.
on a part-time basis, because I do this for a lot of different businesses. But yeah, so I work very closely with Daniel, have done for the last 8 years.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the best part about all of this, you know what I mean? The 6 degrees of separation, it just really puts you in the forefront of everything else that is actually happening. And I was actually watching a video from Daniel where he's actually making much more acquisitions. Now it makes sense based on the person who is behind the scenes.
Yep,
Maybe we should have a bit of a tete-a-tete,
absolutely.
after the
Daniel pulls the deals together, and I make them happen.
well, it takes two to tango, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like you said earlier on. So when you then, I mean, obviously the transition from corporate to running your own business,
yeah,
obviously was not easy. Like you mentioned, you know, you went through some sort of a crisis and you
yeah.
figured yourself out and the wine stuff. But is this still something that is still going, or have you joined a committee that is helping you?
The wine business, Prosper, the wine business today, I've got 3 or 4 clients who've been with me since I launched it, who I do various things for. When I look at the total sales in my business, the wine is less than 5%. And as I said, I'm the biggest customer among them. So yeah, as my best friend says, it's a tax effective way to enjoy my hobby.
Ah, fantastic. I can only imagine, writing off a few things based on, how you're utilizing them. But you then went on and obviously created Ed, then Multiply. You wrote a
Yep.
book around that, which we're going to talk
Yep.
about a little bit later. You've actually built a consultancy that is very founder focused, and that is
Yes.
something that I, saw highlighted in the work that you're doing. What makes your approach unique compared to other financial advisory firms?
Um, I'm still working on getting the wording right from a marketing angle. But one of the things I say to people is we are not an accounting firm. And again, I think that's that right-brained accountancy thing. So many accounting firms they're very traditional. They're very, here are the rules. This is what you have to do. They're totally focused on compliance. And basically me and my team, we are a bunch of people. We are all either qualified accountants, or we have some trainees who we're bringing up to become qualified accountants. But we are all people who have worked in businesses. So rather than working in an accounting firm advising, 137 different businesses, we are all people who've worked inside the businesses. We've been in the trenches with the business owners and the founders and the managing directors, and managing through those, some of those challenges that they face, and really working with them to demonstrate that finance can be so much more than just compliance. Finance brings strategic value. Finance brings focus on profitability, focus on cash flow, looking at pricing, getting into any kind of arrangements where there's a complex issue that needs to be dealt with a customer, and we can kind of come in and just be that somewhat slightly removed from the emotion, but still involved in the business.
It hits different when somebody has been a business owner themselves and now
Yeah,
gets in to really understand the intricacies of a finance transaction or a deal, because they're not just coming in for making sure they do the right thing. They're actually coming in to see what is the actual use case of
exactly.
whatever it is that we're doing. Is this where
Exactly.
you have your hand modeling? Oh, sorry. Is this the face model that you've got going for your business?
The face model comes out of that. So what we do is we go into an entrepreneur-led business, and we will put in a finance team.
Right.
And we'll make sure that all of the finance is running well. And I kind of look at business on a simplistic level. I look at business and I say every single business has three functions: sales and marketing, which is about finding and winning customers; operations and logistics, which is about delivering what you do; and finance and governance, which is all about managing the money and making sure you stay in compliance with the law and all that. Most entrepreneurs that I've met are very good at sales and marketing. Many of them are good at operations and logistics, and most of them are not that good at finance. And if you think about it like three legs of a stool, well, if the finance leg is weak, the stool is going to fall over. So our job is to go in and make sure that the finance leg of the stool is as strong as the sales and marketing leg and the operations leg. And that way the business is on a solid foundation. Once the business is on a solid foundation, then we can get into the advanced strategy of the FACE method, which is fund, acquire, consolidate, exit.
Absolutely. I quite like this. Fund, acquire, consolidate, and then you exiting the business. Just this morning, Daniel released a video, in Australia, and he was given the whole structure. I think maybe you guys would have sat down and worked about it, on how he talks about creating a business from IP, which is obviously the key person of influence type things, and then creating a software out of that, and then seeing how you can exit. So this sort of ties into some of the work that you're obviously doing. And I quite like to see how, obviously it pans out. Now, you brought up a very interesting subject here. So many business operators are, as I've said, operators. They are the actual tool within their business, and maybe some of them are a little bit advanced in their sales and marketing. But as the statistic says, not so many businesses go past the 3-year mark or the 5-year mark, predicated on how they can financially project themselves, or actually work within the finance side of things. Now, you've worked internationally, and obviously you speak multiple languages. Do you find that this is a common occurrence with entrepreneurs all over the world, or does that just happen in Australia, in Melbourne in particular?
It's all over the world. It's all over the world. I've done business throughout North America, throughout Europe, throughout Asia Pacific. It's the same thing everywhere. And part of me wonders why, because when people set up a business, you'd think that they'd want to understand how the finances work, but so many of them, it's almost like they don't understand it, and so they just kind of park it out of the way and think, well, as long as there's money in the bank, it'll be okay.
Absolutely. And nobody's knocking on the door, then things must be fine. But you do understand that half of the time when people start a business, just like yourself, it usually stems from being a hobby. All right. And, like you've got your wine business on the side. Yes, of course, if you would have maybe brought in Gary Vaynerchuk, he would have done wine library for you. And before you know it, you're probably one of the biggest distributors of wine in the whole of the world. But many founders usually wrestle with balancing, the passion of actually wanting something to exist in the world with actual profitability. I've come across a lot of people who literally the business doesn't work, but it's for a noble cause, and they're passionate about it, and mom likes it, so everything else sort of works out. Now, how do you sort of guide your clients to maybe find that balance within their business, that yes, you literally need to be making money in order for you to support that passion project of yours?
Well, I often use the metaphor of that three-legged stool that I used, and because it's an easy one for anyone to picture, and you can demonstrate how it falls over if one of the legs is weak. And so really I focus in on that, and then I'll explain to them the kinds of clients that we've gone in and worked with, the types of companies we work with, the focus that we have, how our teams, and again, this is something where when I'm competing against an accounting firm, well, they'll say, well, we're the accounting firm and we do this. And we say, no, we're part of your team. So when we put a team of people into your business, they are part of your team. Yeah, fine, they might be employed by me, and put in there, but they are part of your team and they interact and interface with your team just like any other team member. So it's not like, well, you can only call us on a Thursday between 3 and 4 p.m. if you got a question. No, we're available. We're part of your team. If you got a question or an issue, you know, with all of the modern day technology that we have, you can put a comment into a Slack channel or a WhatsApp channel or wherever you want to put it, and we will respond to it.
Now, David, there's been a lot of money that has been invested in keeping people dumb about finances. And that obviously is being done on purpose, even in the personal front. You know, financial intelligence is just one of those things that is non-existent. Now, can you imagine, you know, putting yet another layer of putting business intelligence and that sort of financial intelligence? But that has now become your big why, which is obviously helping founders achieve, you know, scalable growth with purpose. And to me, that really stands out. But why is this mission very important and meaningful to you? And how did you sort of?
Well, I mean, like I said, you know, I think finance is in my blood, you know, literally from about the age of 6 or 7. Any time we were playing Monopoly or any board game that had money involved, even if I didn't put my hand up and say, I'll be the banker, my friends would say, well, you be the banker. You're good with the money. They trusted me. They knew I wasn't going to steal the money out of the bank. They knew I wasn't going to rip them off. And so I think it just grew and evolved out of that. And it just felt like the natural and the right thing to do. I mean, I remember when I was about 8 years old, I really liked our family dentist, and I thought, oh, maybe I'll become a dentist. But by the time I was 10, dentistry was gone, and it was definitely back into something to do with, you know, finance and money and all that.
And not only are you doing it for profit, you even have a social enterprise, right? Funding Focus.
I have a social enterprise called Funding Focus. Yeah.
Right.
And our focus there is to level a very uneven playing field that female founders and underrepresented founders face, because the reality is that the vast majority of funding that goes into businesses goes to white men.
Right. And obviously with such a jaded market and with such stereotypes and with such misinformation which is out there with regards to all of that, when you published your first book, the Add Then Multiply. Did you come across any sort of rebuttal, people saying we've always done things like this around here, why do you think you
Not so much with the first book, but it was interesting because it was as a result of the first book coming out that it led to the creation of the social enterprise and the publication of my second book, which is called Funded Female Founders.
Right.
So the first book, when it was published, I started to get invited to speak at events. And I was speaking at an event for small businesses about fundraising, and a woman came up to me after my talk and asked why so little funding went to female founders. And I looked at her and I said, I have no idea, but I'll find out. And Prosper, what I found out shocked me. I mean, the level of funding that goes, initially it was focused on female founders, but it's since widened because of what I discovered. But the level of funding to female founders has never broken through 3% of the total amount of venture capital funding. In the US, the UK, Europe, never broken through 3%.
Is there a reason?
Well, I think there's 3 core reasons. Number 1 is just inherent gender bias. Number 2 is that there is a lack of women and underrepresented people in the fund management industry. Again, it's white guys giving money to white guys. And number 3 is that particularly women tend to be very conservative in their financial projections. And as a result of that, they've ended up unwittingly making their businesses less attractive to investors than they could be. Because investors are going out there, especially in early stage businesses, investors are going out there knowing that a lot of the businesses aren't going to work. So they've got to look at the businesses that are showing the potential that if they do work, they're going to absolutely shoot the moon.
Wow. And
And
in the book,
so, you know, if you're
obviously,
putting together a set of projections and you want to grow your business to, I don't know, 10 or 20 million, which is a great business, well, that's fine. But a venture capital investor isn't interested in a business that's going to grow to 10 or 20 million. They want a business that's going to grow to a billion. So show how if you're going to go after venture capital, you got to show how your business is going to be, has the potential to grow to a billion. Put that in your projections, put that in your aim, make it very clear. We are going to become the next billion-dollar company. Otherwise, don't bother. Go and look elsewhere. There are other sources of funding. But yeah, don't play with the venture capital industry because it has a very single-minded focus.
Now, I don't know if this pertains to where you are, but as somebody who's well-traveled, you might maybe understand this. In Australia, there's what's called a tall poppy syndrome, and it could be I don't know if you want me to explain that, but it's just basically, in society, if you leap above everybody else, you just get chopped,
Yep.
and you send right back.
The Brits are very similar. The Brits are very similar. They love to see someone doing well and knock them down.
Right. Now,
Tall poppy syndrome is a great name for it.
right. Could that be maybe a reason why women don't quite find themselves in the realms of?
In all honesty, Prosper, I've never thought of it in that from that angle before. That could be another contributing factor to it. But I've done a lot of work and a lot of research around the first 3 points that I mentioned, and I'm absolutely convinced that they are driving forces. But yeah, there's no reason why the tall poppy syndrome couldn't also be part of it.
And recently, I don't know if you've been looking at your LinkedIn lately, every second post talks about imposter syndrome and, things that could also be thwarting the growth of these women. And could that also be a contributing factor?
It certainly could be. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Again, I mean, where I've come from has been more looking less at the issue of the women themselves, because I have a fundamental belief that there's actually nothing wrong with the women. It's the industry that needs to change. It's that the investment management industry that needs to change. And the challenge that you face there is that if you're working in the investment management industry doing well, you're making a ton of money. So why bother changing? But I sit back and I think, how can the investment management industry, which is a teeny tiny fraction of the human population, how can it be right? And all women, which is half of the global population, 4 billion people, and they be wrong? I just don't believe that,
Information.
And you look at the role women play in society. I mean, none of us would be here if it weren't for women. And the nurturing and the caring and that instinctive, motherhood kind of stuff. And it's fascinating. My older daughter just had a little baby 7 weeks ago, and just seeing that just instinctive thing, it's a wonderful, wonderful thing to observe. So yeah, it's not the women that are wrong. It's the fund management industry. Well, so I don't know how I'm going to change them, but I'm working on it.
Congratulations on being a granddad. At least if you can't do it in this lifetime, try and do it for the future generations. Now you've got some people that are waiting for that to happen, because I always believe that proverbial glass ceiling is made of glass because there's somebody who's looking in and they're actually looking to see what's actually happening within that particular environment. So if we can elevate ourselves, I think even our moms, sisters, and aunts will be able to literally create something that is remarkable.
Absolutely.
But obviously, you might not have had cut through in this particular genre, but your TEDx literally broke the internet. I mean, 3 million views. First of all, congratulations. I told you I was a little bit starstruck. I mean, you're like a celebrity in this space, Can you maybe share what that experience was like for, or maybe if you've got a memorable takeaway of
the whole TEDx experience was great. it was a bit surreal because it was actually filmed in the middle of COVID lockdowns. So the only people who were in the audience were the other speakers, and we were all wearing masks and stuff, except when we were up on stage. But no, the whole experience was fantastic, and then the talk went live, and the talk's called "The Fight for Fairer Funding," and so the talk went live, and it got up to a few thousand views, and then one day I woke up and it just started taking off, and I discovered that there were 3 YouTube influencers who had started supporting the talk, and they were clearly mentioning it out to their communities, and it just took off, and it went from a few thousand views to like 3 million views in, I'm not sure, maybe just over a year. And you can go in and you scroll down through the comments, and they get nested, and there's 3 people whose they have like 500 comments nested in under their name, so they're clearly the ones who really drove this. But it was mind-blowing, and it's just like, wow.
Absolutely. So when you're going out with your grandkid, do you actually have to wear a hoodie and sunnies? Because
no.
Fantastic. Now, David, what would be the best way that people can maybe get a hold of you and maybe learn a thing or two about how you can help them, especially maybe those that are underrepresented founders?
Yep, absolutely. So the best ways to reach out to me are via my website, which is addthenmultiply.com. So just like the book, addthenmultiply.com. Or connect with me on social enterprise and on social media. And my preferred social media is LinkedIn. And just go onto LinkedIn, and it's David B. Horne with an E. So David B. Horne, but David B. Horne with an E. Nice little rhyme. And reach out and connect, and happy to help.
Fantastic. I'll make sure that all those links are in the show notes so that people can actually build a pathway to your proverbial internet doors there. But they probably have to maybe pick a ticket and wait, because those 3 million people are already in line.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Fantastic. Now, David, when we started, you introduced us to this young boy who was playing Monopoly and was always called the banker. And obviously, you didn't know that your life was going to turn out to be like this. So I introduced the concept of glass ceiling. So let's say you were in a room where somebody's watching you playing Monopoly and is watching what you're doing and things of that nature, and that person is probably you. What would you whisper to this younger self, especially knowing what you know now about life?
Oh, that's good. Be brave and follow your heart.
Because that's what you did, Dave. You were brave, went across the pond, across the world, and now you're the one sending the elevator down to help those underrepresented.
One other thing. It doesn't matter if you fall down. It matters that you get back up again.
That's pretty cool.
And I look at my grandkids, and my grandson's 2. My granddaughter's just 7 weeks, but my grandson's 2, and he runs around and trips and falls and hurts himself and gets back up again, and off he goes. And his speech is developing, and he'll say something wrong, and we'll help him with that. And nobody's saying, "Oh, well, that's no good. You can't do that," or whatever. And yet, when we become adults, we have this thing that, I don't know, our education system and society instills in us that, oh, you can't become a failure. Oh, it's bad to be a failure. Well, there's no such thing as a failure. A failure is only when somebody gives up. Otherwise, we're just trying and learning. And it's okay to try and learn it, to try and to make a mistake and learn from it and to try again. So yeah, it doesn't matter how many times you fall down. What matters is how many times you get back up again.
So many people fall down and they never decide to rise back up. So it's usually grand opening, grand closing. And that's pretty much it for a lot of people there. Now, David, I mean, from what you're telling us here. I mean, obviously, we introduced you as the right brain accountant and somebody who's doing a big difference, especially for the underrepresented founders out there, and being a voice for the voiceless. And also the mentors and the people that you have come across in your life, the people that you've learned from, et cetera, et cetera. What that resembles for me, David, is I don't know if you've ever watched in a movie, and then there's people are there in a boardroom, and they're at their wits' end. They don't know what the next logical step is, and there's a crisis that they need to work on, and everybody's scrambling for answers. And then the intern just slides in a business card, under the CEO's shoulder, and then he looks at it, and then he's like, David, yes, send a chopper. And then, the chopper comes whisking down wherever you are in the world. I kind of feel like you're the send a chopper guy, especially in the accounting world.
That's a great metaphor. I like it. I like it.
Fantastic. Now that we know where you've been, what it is that you're working on, and things of that nature, if a business wants to send a chopper, what would they find you doing? What's next? What's in the future?
I mean, if a business wants to send a chopper, I'll jump on board the chopper and come and find out what they need and work out how we can fix the problem for them. And if we can't fix the problem, I'll be straight up about it. I won't say, oh yeah, we'll do this, that, and the other. If I can't fix your problem, I'll tell you. But if I can fix your problem, I'll work with you and put something together that allows you to get yourself back on track.
Absolutely. Now, David, I can't thank you enough for joining us and sharing such powerful insights. I mean, your journey from the corporate life to founder-focused finance is truly inspiring. And I can't wait to see how many choppers are going to be sent down your way, my friend.
I'll put a helipad on the roof.
Absolutely. And for everybody that's tuning in, thank you so much for coming all the way in this journey. And I want you to remember that obviously there's a lot of takeaways here for every entrepreneur that is looking to start, scale, and grow a business that's profitable and enjoyable. Whether you're aiming for that explosive growth or you're just looking to infuse your business with purpose, I think David is the guy you want to send the chopper to, and hopefully he's not too busy with his grandkids, as he has told you. He almost has a teenager and just got a princess that just came through. So for those that have watched up until this part, thank you once again. Be sure to rewatch this episode, because sometimes we might miss out on every insight. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe for more conversations like this on the Online Prosperity Show. But if you got everything that you needed from this show, why don't you share this with an underrepresented founder who is looking to get funding for their next business venture? And you would have actually done the world a service, because once that product or service is out there in the world, you never know who it might help. So do your part and share this with somebody who desperately needs to know how they can be in front of a venture capitalist. Until next time, bye for now.